In this video, we're going to use loops to do one of the most common things, which is validating user input. Whenever we ask the user to enter something, we always want to validate to make sure they entered something correctly. So let's set up a class here to read something from the user. So we'll import java.util.scanner, right, to be able to import. We'll declare our scanner variable. I'll call it in. You can call it whatever you want. In is nice and short. And we'll tell it that we're reading from the console. Okay, so now let's pick a value we're going to read. Let's say we're going to ask them to enter an integer between 1 and 10. So user number. I'll declare an integer user number, and I will ask them to enter a number between 1 and 10. Okay, now when I read this in, I'm going to say user number equals, I'll use my in variable and the method next int to read an integer, right? Now, let's say they didn't enter a number between 1 and 10. I could say if, user number is greater than or equal to 1, or let's say less than 1, right? Because that's not between 1 and 10. Or the number they type is greater than 10, right? Then I could put an error out, right? I could say that number is not between 1 and 10, right? So if I ran this code, it would work fine, right? I would run it, and I'd say enter a number between 1 and 10. If I type 3, everything's fine, right? If I run it and type, 12, it says it's not between 1 and 10. And if I typed a negative number, right, -3, right? Okay, so the problem is I don't want my program to end when they enter the wrong number. I want to ask them to enter it again, right? So I could say, right here, I could say, enter, please try again, right? And then I have a little dilemma, because if I do in here, if I say, okay, user number equals in.nextInt, what if they enter a number incorrectly again? Am I going to put another if statement below that and then keep going? No. So what I want to do is I want to utilize a loop, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to surround this code from the enter a number in a do while loop, right? So I'm going to say do this, right, all the way down to here, right? And I'm going to auto indent. The way you auto indent, by the way, is you do Command A, right, and then Command I on a Mac, right, Control on a PC, right? So it's going to do all that, and I want to say while the user's number is bad, right? And I already have that condition right here, right? So while they typed a bad number, meaning they typed a number less than 1 or greater than 10, I'm going to stay in this loop. I'm going to keep looping as long as they keep typing numbers that are less than 1 or greater than 10, right? And it's going to give them an error each time, please try again, and it's going to come back up to the top of the loop and say enter a number between 1 and 10. So let's run this program now, right? So if I type a good number, I'm done. My program dropped out of this while loop. I could even put a message here that says, program is done, valid, number entered, right? Okay, so if I run the program now and I enter a number like 3, it drops out of my loop and it prints program is done, valid, number is entered. Now, let's say I type an incorrect number. I put 12. So it's going to come into here. It's going to say, is it less than 1? No. is it greater than 10? Yes, this is an OR, so it's going to print out that number is not between 1 and 10. Please try again, right? And then it's going to come to the bottom of the while. It's a bad number, and it's going to go back up to the top and say enter a number between 1 and 10, right? So let's hit enter here. That number is not between 1 and 10. Please try again. Enter a number between 1 and 10, right? And it's going to keep doing this. If I type 14, it's going to keep doing it until finally I type a correct number in, okay? So this is a quick way of doing user validation on input. By the way, you should validate input anytime you ask the user a question, right? You should validate to make sure that they entered a proper number or letter or choice from a menu.